It's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
Today we have Jim Donovan, drummer, percussionist, recording artist, writer, teacher, and lecturer. He's got a master's in education. He's one of the founding members of super multi-platinum group Rusted Root, Pittsburgh band that I was lucky enough to have be a little part of my history. His TED Talk on how to trick your brain into falling asleep has been viewed millions of times. He's also an author of the book Drum Circle Leadership, Learning to Create and Lead Your Own Transformational Drum Circles. His mission is to spread the healing power of music through education and performance. He currently is performing with his band, the Sun King Warriors. His drummer, Joe Marini, and I have consumed many cigars in Los Angeles together. So welcome to the show, Jim Donovan.
It's great to be here, Joe. Thank you.
And, I guess this is a really kind of, our podcast is a deep dive. Oh, you also have a podcast, and it's ironically called the Jim Donovan Show.
I like the Dim Donovan Show. That might be better.
Dim Donovan.
Your alter ego.
Just ask my wife. She'll tell you.
I'm fascinated. We do a deep dive into technology, and we love to nerd out about stuff. And, we've had a run recently where we've had some legendary guys that you'd want to ask them a question about the record that you've been listening to your whole life, and they'll give you all the nitty gritty on it. We also really have found this little niche of talking about why people were successful, what it takes to be a success in the music business, all the stuff you wouldn't get in the Mix magazine article, but the reason why these people truly are staying in rooms and being successful. They all have so much in common when you look at them that way. And that's kind of what correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of what you're focusing on in regards to the power of music, right? I mean, there is an attribute to how we participate as artists and on behalf of our music. Care and custody, we do whatever it takes to make that successful. But the process of music and the healing powers of it and just our responsibility with it. Tell us a little bit about your viewpoint on it.
Sure. I know firsthand, as probably most of the listeners out there do, how powerful music can be to change the state that we're in, whether it's using music for stress relief or getting out of a bad mood. What I noticed playing with Rusted Root over and over again, this is back through the 90s, is that people would come and they would participate with us by dancing. And of all the different things that we did with music, watching people dance to music and have an experience that felt like they were with us was probably among the most satisfying. And that's really what led me to trying to figure out and research, what in the world is happening when people interact with music. We know it makes people feel good. We know they have a good time, but there's got to be more, because I know, like when I play the drums, if I really get into a space, I can shift my consciousness in a way, almost like I'm playing but dreaming at the same time. If I'm playing like extreme repetition. And to me, that's a fascinating thing that music can do that. Mm-hmm. And so I've spent the last 20 years checking that out and learning, really how anybody, even if they're not a musician, can use musical devices and musical techniques to help themselves with some of the big problems that we've got in the world, like getting our minds to get quiet at night before falling asleep, like feeling more connected with people in this age of social isolation. So that's really a big part of what I do now is bring people into interactive music making experiences. Sometimes it's with drums in a drum circle. Sometimes it's just with their voices. But all of it has this interesting basis in research. And we're seeing more and more application of it as the years go by, as we're looking for more things that aren't always a pharmaceutical to help us with some of these things that we might pop a pill for.
It's interesting when you talk about the drum circles. I was a huge Grateful Dead fan, and the drum circles and the repetition of music you're talking about. It's really a form of meditation when you think about it. Like it does the same. I do a bunch of transcendental meditation stuff that really changed my life.
Cool.
But that repetition of music is almost like a mantra in a way, and you get similar effects out of that kind of thing that you do out of meditation. Am I wrong with that in thinking so that?
You're right on. What I've learned about this is that there's a brainwave state shift whenever we are, whether it's meditating or doing deep breathing, or if I'm doing repetitious drumming. If we watched an EEG reading of the brainwave, you can actually see it start to connect with or entrain with the patterns that are going along. And that was something I felt intrinsically, watching people dance to our music back in the 90s, because a lot of what we did was very repetitious, and it wasn't so much about chops as it was just get into a space. Mm-hmm. And what I found is that it's not exclusive to trained musicians. And this is the thing I really focus most of my whole career on, is how can we bring the absolute beginner into it in a way that they can access without having to have years of training, and still have some kind of musical experience that is meaningful to them. And what I find is that people, they get in and then they realize, wow, I really like this. And then they go learn more and become, better musician. A backwards approach, maybe backwards from the way we were taught.
I think it's almost the more challenging thing. The thing that's fascinating to me is what I'm hoping to open my mind to today is, as a musician, coming up, finding your passion, executing it, having those early recordings really do something for you. Then you get involved in the business of building a 1099 independent contractor career out of it. And you start to find yourselves locked away in rooms, making records as a byproduct of a life that you've got to generate an income, right? So you drift away from your initial purpose of music, right? How do you get those people? Those are the, I think you can disassemble someone on some of these. Sometimes I'll be writing with amateur songwriters. They'll win a contest or an auction, or you'll find a military guy that's just the toughest looking guy in the room. And I'll sit there with an acoustic guitar and we'll start writing. And it's almost unfair. You can disassemble an amateur, a consumer. You can disassemble them with music. You can have them tell you their deepest, darkest secrets within 60 seconds, because it's almost unfair. Yeah. But when you get the battle-scarred Rusted Root in, what would it be, 1998, let's say, playing 190 shows a year, going from bus to hotel to not even knowing what city you're in. How do you get that person to take the therapeutic dose of music? How do you get them to reconnect with that? Because all these studio guys that we have on our podcast, all of these people that are stuck in their rooms from morning till nighttime, I think it's essential that they stay connected with the essence of what drew them to music in the first place. We get off that.
I think that you're right. We get really stuck in marketing. Obviously, we're looking for the gig. How do we keep food on the table and the mortgage paid and all that stuff? And it seems like it becomes the most important thing. And I experienced that when I didn't drift away from Rusted Root. I left. It was like cold turkey. I got out. I had little kids at home. I refused to feel awful missing them, and got off the road. And for me, so completely detaching from it, I was depressed for a couple of years about that. I didn't have a sense of what my identity was, because I had wrapped it all up, and I'm Jim Donovan, the drummer from Rusted Root. And I thought that was what I was going to be for the rest of my life. It was just fine. And I realized that thankfully life is long, and it changes, and it isn't predictable. And having, to get to your question, one of the ways that it wasn't that it forced me, but it really pushed me to looking for relief, is to be in pain, right? If we're in enough pain, we'll do something to get out of the pain. And part of that pain for me was really not even understanding how to be with people, because people looked at me a certain way. They saw me as the role. And I saw me as the role. So I didn't know how to interact and connect with people. But I desperately wanted to have that. It was one of the, I think, the unconscious reasons I began teaching was to get people in a room together and just do some stuff together. And of course, they could pay me for that, right? But it was.
You don't do it for exposure, just the opportunity.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, I'm not. I promise I won't swear on this podcast. But that's
swear.
one thing that. Come on, man! There's going to be 100 people there. It's going to be great.
So, how do you work through the? Not to interrupt, but how do you work through the pain? The thing that caused you pain was leaving Rested Root. How do you use music as therapy to get you through that? How do you find these guys that have been beat up by the music business and have them still be able to use music as a healing part of their life? How does that work? Does it work? Can you do it?
Yes, I know that you can. And a person has to be willing to give it a chance. And that's usually the way I would begin any kind of a lesson workshop, is that nothing's going to work if you don't give it a chance, if you leave your mind closed. But I can, one of the ways I get people in, especially the doubter, is I start to talk about the research behind these things. Here's what happens when you start to tap your hands on your legs at 16th notes at 60 beats per minute. Here's what starts to happen in the brain. And then here's what happens when you start to slow that pattern down. I explain it in technical terms because so many grizzled musicians like that. They like to get analytic about it and try to figure out what's exactly happening. I satisfy that. And then we do the experience, and I'll guide them through the thing I did on my TED Talk. It's called How to Trick Your Brain into Falling Asleep. And I'll guide them through the exercise. And I do it long enough so that they can have the experience. And more often than not, they do. And then they go, oh, I can do this myself. I don't need someone to do it for me. It's not a passive experience. It's an active participation in this simple idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And tell us what an experience might be like.
Yeah, sure. So this is not something you would do in the car because it actually works. So be careful. But basically, I would invite people to put their hands on their laps and just tap like the sound of a ticking stopwatch. Yeah, do it along with me.
Okay.
Right? So you're just tapping right, left, right, left, right, left. You relax your shoulders. You breathe a little bit. Just settle yourself. And then what we do is just focus your attention on the sound of the tapping. Right? Do your best to let go of thoughts and bring your attention back over and over again to the feeling and the sound of your hands tapping. The tapping can be very light. It doesn't have to be hard. Right, left, right, left, right, left. And the trick here is just hang out with it. To fast track the effect, we add a little bit of slow breathing. So you can follow along if you want to. So we breathe in and then out, nice and slow. And in through the nose and out. Just a couple more. In and out. One more time in. Slowly out. And breathe at your own pace and keep the tapping going. And then we're going to slow the tapping down. And then slow it down again. One more time. Let's slow it down again. 4, 3, 2, 1. And then just breathe, relax. Notice how you feel.
This is like my attempt at TM. You know, I get in my own way. You know, the closest I've had success to was a buddy of mine, Tommy, a student at the Apprentice Academy, took me to a float tank, a deprivation tank.
Okay.
It's been the only time that I've been able to get past that thinking of every word you're saying. There's an art to separating yourself. I find it when I play guitar that if I'm watching television, I'll play things that it's a different level of connection to the instrument. And I'll play a lick and I'll be like, I got to write a song around that. I'm detached. But I think that we all have a tough time detaching away from that, especially when you're stuck in a studio for 10, 12 hours a day, so hyper-focused. Right. Your whole strategy on life is, if I'm not focused, I'm not working. You know, I see great value in this for people that are fixated on their artist careers, fixated on their engineering and producing and songwriting careers. They're so focused on that they don't take the time to step out and focus by defocusing. But it's difficult for us people. The only time I've been able to do it is in that self-deprivation tank. Yeah. I'd like to think I could apply that, you know, like
it is difficult. That.
But it's incredibly difficult.
And I find for men, especially, and I don't mean to overgeneralize, but for men who have that mindset that if I'm not working, I'm not doing anything productive, which is bullshit. Because we have to have the other side where we have the downtime. The downtime is when the brain consolidates all of the new things that we've been learning. If we don't have that downtime, it doesn't happen, and then we can stagnate pretty quickly. The other thing is that we aren't patient. And it takes, you know, for some of us, especially if you're very analytical, you might need to hang out and do this 5 times over 5 different days. You know, not when you're on a podcast, you know, trying to keep that stuff together, but you do it like when you're getting ready for bed, or you do it when you're just hanging out on the porch, you know, and give yourself an opportunity for the thing to work, because, you know, we can keep repeating the same stuff that we've done over and over again our whole life, and we don't grow. And the growth comes from a little bit of edge and some challenge where we go, you know what? I've seen other people can do this. I'll give myself a chance to really try it out. A lot of people think things like this are like a Xanax. I take the Xanax knocks me out, which is true. This is, you're teaching your body to do something it isn't used to doing yet. Kind of like riding a bike. But then once you have it, you have it.
That's true. You know, I think that for technicians, people that are maybe more focused on repeatable things like audio engineers, and maybe even songwriting in a certain sense is a muscle that a lot of the work can be done via repetition and knowing the art of it. But I think that it's required that you have down periods on the creative side. So the ideas of songwriting, what it is you want to say, and what's important enough to say that you're going to sit someone down and require them to listen to you for 3.5 minutes, like that stuff takes the pain. It takes a required cycle of super prolific and busy, and then down, not doing anything for 6 months, and then to have something else to say, to metabolize a new piece of information that's a conversation you want to carry forward. You can't just keep writing. You can keep writing, but you get a lot of what sounds like AI written songs. Right. To really say something, you've got to have a moment. For you to come right out of Rusted Root and then go right into something else isn't a healthy thing. It's just a time bomb.
For sure.
You need to process it in some way, shape, or form.
A necessary one, yeah. And you're right. I'd say there's probably 5 years and until I started to recognize, you know, the next version of who I was becoming. I didn't even know it at the time what it was. I just knew that I felt bad. I felt uncomfortable because I had to work at relearning well, what could I be if I'm not that? Because I'm not that anymore.
Right.
It's in the past, and it was beautiful. But what's you're only what was I at the time? 30 something.
Yeah. Depression's underrated.
It's a bear.
Well, it's underrated in the respect that you can't know true joy until you have experienced true depression, right? Like if the world is just the mountaintops, you have no perspective on it.
Good point.
I'm grateful for the flow of my life from, great successes to great failures, because it gives you the scope of what's possible. I mean, I'd hate to just have a life that is unaffected by failure, by the 5 years that you spent reacquainting yourself with why you're still worthy of a valid person, right?
It's a great point. And I know I've seen people go through that thing where they don't have a lot of those peaks and valleys, only to discover it because they're not taking any chances.
Right.
They're not going out to the edge.
Yeah.
And just jumping off occasionally. And that's its own kind of pain.
I'd love to find a program for musicians who are maybe a little bit more resistant because they've seen the way, they know the sleight of hand, they know the magician's tricks, right, with music, but there's a way to get reacquainted. I try to continually reacquaint myself with my original purpose, why I got into music. I try to make good decisions on the records that I'm a part of, because real quickly you can ruin your whole center of self just because there was an opportunity. You went out and did this, and now you hate music because of it. I think it's important for us to help fellow musicians to find a way to, even if maybe they aren't wired that way, to sit down in the morning and find a quiet place to start to focus and center themselves in a way that they're able to get through the day in a more, be a better version of themselves.
I couldn't agree more. It is, just like practicing the guitar or the drums or singing, disciplining your mind to understand that it isn't in charge, and that your consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, actually can make better decisions. The brain loves to run amok and just stay in that busy mode the whole time. And even like when you're going to bed at night, it likes to cycle and worry and think about all the stuff. But what you're talking about is it's a discipline. It's a practice. It's the scales of wellness. Whether it's my tapping exercise, whether it is the really slow, deep breathing exercises that you might do in a yoga class, whether it's just going for a walk with nothing else in your ears, just like being present. That it's a skill set, just like learning a chord progression.
It seems like it's needed more now than ever with the attachment to social media and all that stuff. It's like it's like a tailspin. Everyone's in a tailspin, it seems like.
I see quite a bit of it. I work with college students a lot. I work with a lot of older adults, and no one's immune right now from it. They weren't immune before, but what you're saying is true. It's infinitely worse since the pandemic, election, all that stuff.
Right.
So people are still recovering from it, and the problem is that we're not encouraged to lean into ourselves when we're in this this kind of discomfort. We're encouraged to get back on here and look for something on Instagram, or go get a drink, or smoke a bowl, or whatever the new thing is, or the old thing. But the truth is, we have so much ability just with what we're built with to regulate the nervous system. Mm-hmm. And that's really the skill set that you learn. I teach a whole course on it. It's called Music and Wellness. And it's the big idea is how to regulate your nervous system in this day and age where it's constantly being sparked into fight or flight.
Hmm.
Yeah, we've spent our whole lives getting conditioned into how we see the world. So we're locked into this regimen. And with music, you almost detach from that. right? So like a drum circle will put you into a trance. I've done that thing where I've driven somewhere and I've been like, I don't know how I got here. I stopped at every stoplight. I used my turn signal. I did all this stuff and I don't know, but I'm here. But there's an all other state that we go into that if we can control that state, like that dude who climbed Everest in pair of shorts, and the Iceman dude that was on Joe Rogan. You know,
Wim Hof.
Yeah, he's able to control his, immune system, and there's a lot of things that you mentioned this earlier and it got me thinking. It's like, you have to be open to let go. Find a way that your version of letting go, even when you're mixing a record, it's about perspective. So finding a way to let go might mean that you go out on the porch and you smoke a cigar, or you walk your dog and you have a fresh listen when you come back. There's different increments of that all along in your creative life daily that you can give yourself an opportunity, but it requires that you have the faith to let go of the rope, that your perception of what is happening. You got to let go of that every once in a while. So when you come back in contact with it, you can have a fresh opinion about it as an artist, as a creator, to be able to disassociate yourself and do things that are good for your wellness, because your wellness will bring a new sense of freshness. Just today, the sun's out and it's beautiful. It's been rainy here in Tennessee the last 2 days. And it's just waking up this morning and looking out my window, it was like immediately just the environment made me have a better perspective on the day. There's simple things we can do to ourselves. You don't have to turn into a flower child, right? Nope. You don't have to join a colony somewhere and, live off the land. There's something we need to find our version of how we can remain fresh and not be stagnant in the perceptions. Because every time you have that perception, you lock in the reality that you'll never do anything greater than that perception, right?
Yeah, it's a distorted thought.
You're capable of a lot more.
Yeah, it's just a distorted thought. It's something that exists in your mind that you've made up. It's a story you tell yourself. Yeah. A person tells himself.
My buddy Jimmy Wayne wrote a lyric that said, the sky's not the limit because there's footprints on the moon. And you think about that, if you keep telling yourself the sky's the limit as though it's this thing to strive for, and then you realize there's footprints on the moon, it will just change your whole mentality of what's possible. That's the idea for us musicians. I see value in what you're saying. It's like, as selfishly as a creator, as an engineer, as a producer, as a songwriter, as a mixer, I want to be able to show up every day and have some say over the consequence of it, to be able to not just be stuck in gear, living my life as I've been able to live it for 50 years. I want to be able to get a little more, push a little harder. And even though music, we're familiar with it, so we can maybe demystify it a little bit, it's still a valid way to find a way, whether that be through music or the lack of music, silent concerto, where you're able to focus in and see the world a little bit differently. And then, come out focused, do something extraordinary or extraordinary. I mean, that's how I'm thinking about our audience. I'm thinking about how we can help them, even though they know music. So it's maybe not as easy for them to use it medicinally. It's a state of mind. The music is just a vehicle, a prescribed medication that gets them to a destination. So it's interesting. I don't know what to think of that.
Another way to think. Well, another way to think about what I'm talking about is the element of music. So it's not so much that we're talking about songs, although you certainly can. They can do quite a bit to help you. I'm talking about rhythm and the body's effect, the body's reaction to rhythm, which engineers know very well. We know that if the music is faster, it creates energy. If the music is slower, it can slow us down. We get that. We know, or at least maybe we've heard from the singers in your life, that when they sing, they feel good. Like it kind of opens you up in a way when you sing. That you can express feeling, actual emotion through sound. We know when the singer's got juice and they're in that emotional state and they're pouring it out on tape. Like, when it's there and when it's not. So where we are here is we take those two things, just sound and rhythm. And then we start to apply them in a really unique way. So another example, and this sounds like weird hippy dippy crap. I realize it, but there is quite a bit of peer-reviewed NIH.gov research on what I'm talking about here. So if we wanted to use sound, for example, to regulate your nervous system, if you put your hands on your neck and you hum, just like this, underneath my hands, there is a nerve. It's called the vagus nerve. This nerve is attached to your brain. It goes behind your eyes, your ears. It goes throughout every single organ in your body, and its function is like a chemical superhighway. So it sends chemical message from the brain to the organs and vice versa, from the organs to the brain. When we stimulate that nerve, just with simple humming or singing, what happens is it moves and it tells the brain and the body to release chemicals that make you feel good. Stuff like dopamine, which we're all familiar with, endorphins, which are natural painkillers, this stuff called nitric oxide, which is a natural anti-inflammatory. It's produced in your paranasal sinuses, and this other stuff called oxytocin, which is a natural bonding hormone. All of that stuff comes from just the act of vocalizing. So when I teach people how to use this, you do. This could be it could be a chant like Om. We've all seen the stereotypical monk on the mountain chanting Om. It could be a simple humming sound, and you do like 4 to 8 of those, and you'll start to feel the chemicals moving through your head, like you feel a little bit buzzy. It can be something like listening to 3 songs that you really like and humming along to the melody for 3 songs a day, 15 minutes of it, and you'll notice that your body starts to get relaxed, your mood starts to improve, not because you're doing any weird voodoo magic, you're just creating chemicals that are at the ready if you decide to stimulate them. It costs no money.
Right.
Right?
Wow. Easy enough to prove. Do it for a week. And then
do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, if you feel a result, do it again the next day.
This is the thing. I'm out of business if my stuff doesn't work. People go, nope, and they move on. But I'm going on, this is my 21st year. I work for, getting ready to work with the VA, going into veterans hospitals. Actually, I'm teaching staff how to do what I've been teaching. I have a whole training program. I work in addiction recovery, where I train staff to do I have developed a whole program that they follow, and they work with people that are recovering from heroin addiction, etc. Same exact work, but I have another program that tilts it towards people with disabilities like autism. And the idea is that we give people access to the elements of music. We show them the basics of how to get just simple rhythmic music making happening. The basics of the very, very basics of how to use the voice to do what we just talked about. And just those elements, people are finding that they're able to stop using Advil in some cases because they can solve their own headache. I've a couple people that I have in my Facebook group talk about how they're able to lower their blood pressure with the vagus nerve stimulation, which is something that we've seen in the research. It's actually a really easy thing to do to bring your numbers down that way. There's research on that same exact technique for people who are pre-Alzheimer's, where they're able to reverse some of the biomarkers by doing an exercise like I just showed you for about 12 minutes a day. Now, they have to do it for an extended time, but it actually starts to reverse some of the biomarkers of people that we see that are in the beginning stages of going into Alzheimer's and dementia.
And these are documented studies that are proven studies. You wonder why they don't pursue more of that when you go to your doctor.
Well, this is no one's making money on sound.
You know it.
You know,
we could attribute that to
the truth?
Hit songwriter world. Well, that's an interesting thing. I mean, half of it seems so crazy I can't understand it. Right? Yeah. You tell me that, and I'm like, this feels insane to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But half of it, I'm like, okay, why not try it? I can see, there is a calming effect to all that and vibration. Even when let's take rhythm out of it, take frequency spectrum into it, and you give somebody something at 45 hertz that is rhythmic, like underneath a kick drum, and you literally feel it through your whole body. It washes over you.
Yes.
I was at a Rusted Root show as a young kid at Graffiti, and Jeff Jones was the sound guy, famous crazy guy in Pittsburgh. And the sound coming out of that sound system that night, maybe he's a genius or maybe it was just magic, but you guys were playing and it was it went through you. Yep. It was perfect sonically and a great performance from a band that was truly unique. That is that's as much therapy as a back massage. I could get how like frequencies at 40 hertz. They said the human body resonates at 7 hertz, right? If you can produce a 7 hertz tone loud enough, somebody will evacuate their body. It's just, it is the facts of the human body.
Yeah.
So when you get to these frequencies, it's not just rhythm. It's like your whole body, it moves through it. You see those 432 frequency, studies where they'll put images, they'll put sand or water on a piece of, tinfoil and put it over a speaker. And our 440 scale is a mess, but when you go to 432, everything shows up like it's a Etch-a-Sketch, perfect, beautiful pattern.
Yeah, it looks like a mandala.
As much as my brain tells me things are like, oh, that sounds a little bit insane. The other part of my brain is like, there's so many things in my old age that I just cannot understand or explain, and I know that they work, that there's a beauty in that too, where it's just like, what's the harm in doing it and seeing if it works for you?
This is the thing. Either it works or it doesn't. Not everything works for everybody. Not everybody likes country music, right? Not everybody likes hip hop. And so you find all you need is one, find one thing that brings you back into yourself so you can feel like yourself. And, like you're saying, if what you're doing is working and you feel happy and wonderful in your life, then you win. Keep going. You're great.
Right.
But if not, if you're fatigued, if you feel jumbled, if your mind doesn't work the way you'd like it to work, if it doesn't perform the way you'd like it to perform, if you keep doing the same things over and over again, you're going to keep getting these same results. I mean,
that's it.
Know this. You know this
that's
from
a
making
great
records.
Point. That's a great point. It's like there was a Dr. Phil. Not that I watch Dr. Phil, but I used to religiously.
True confessions, Joe West.
Religiously watch Oprah and Dr. Phil, and he said something to that effect, which is like, what you've been doing isn't working. Why would you continue doing what you know is not working? And that's the part where you're just like, okay, I got to start. I have to accept that I've been unsuccessful in solving X, Y, or Z in my life, whether that be physical or mental problems or focus or creativity or just, self-fulfillment, prophecy of where you want to be. You have to acknowledge that what you're doing isn't working. So then you have to be humble and then do an honest search as to what is it? I got to protect myself because this is like to be put on a high pedestal. Like you need to remain safe from bad advice, but you've got to open yourself up to people that you respect and actually try things that you're not doing. That's, it's a known outcome if you continue doing.
That's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged.
For sure.
I've done that a million times.
Oh yeah. Me too.
And I think, a lot of that, Joe, and I know this, from having a big one, is ego. We think, men think, we can handle it. We can just suck it up. We believe all those old messages we are told about how we're supposed to take care of ourselves and how we're supposed to work. We're supposed to, beat ourselves to a pulp. If we're not working, we're not valid. And, I'm a workaholic as much as anybody, but I'm here to tell you, as someone who's been through some pretty tremendous health stuff, that our time here is limited. And not only that, but the time that we have in a lifetime to stay healthy, and the sort of front loading that we need to do, that front loading is happening now. Whatever we're doing now affects us at 60, 70, 80 years old. And so if we can't figure it out in middle age, if we can't figure it out in the 20s and 30s, we set ourselves up for more suffering later on, self-inflicted, because we haven't taken that time to really get to know how is it that I can take an hour a day and go for a walk and just breathe. What do I need to do to make that happen? Because my body's going to be better for it. My brain's going to be better for it, rather than just sitting in my chair the entire day looking at the screen.
I noticed that if I were to take 10 minutes off, I'll gain more than 10 minutes in productivity in the next hour.
Absolutely.
Very true.
And Joe, it's productivity, which we're addicted to, but it's also, we deserve to feel good, right? Just to wake up and feel peaceful, and not have that thing on our backs that's going, go, go, go. Like there's got to be some sort of balance in that, because you guys probably know burnout is a real thing. And if we get burned out at the wrong time, when we're in the middle of the thing we've been waiting for our whole career, that would be a shame.
Great point. So tell us real quick. Where can people find you? What socials and or website?
Yeah, Instagram. If you just search Jim Donovan Sound Health, you find me on Instagram. Same thing on Facebook and YouTube. And then my website is called donovanhealth.com. And if you're interested in the research, you just go donovanhealth.com, click on articles, and I have articles on every symptom you could imagine, from depression, anxiety,
that's cool,
sleep. And it's all, I put all the citations in the articles so you can go check those out. I'm an academic. I teach at a university, so I have to back myself up. I can't just say stuff works because I think they work. But
I like that, which you just go search and say, hey, I'm having neuropathy in my fingertips. What can I do to help that? Or I'm having trouble sleeping. That's a
more
cool
general.
Cool way
I'm having trouble with my memory. I'm having trouble with sleeping. I'm having some tinnitus. There's things in there, and I provide tutorials in there. There are I have some videos that you can watch. That the tapping exercise we did earlier is in there. If you just search on sleep, you'll find it.
Do you have stuff on productivity, like how to game your day up?
I've done a lot of work on focus. Put like, now for you guys, you need to be listening to other music all the time. But for folks that are writing, I like to put on certain kinds of tracks. Like I have some rhythmic tracks I've created, which are just, an hour of African drumming, but no soloing, just really repetitious. It's I think about 95 to 100 beats per minute. And it kind of keeps the brainwave in the space where I can just get into that groove. I don't have to think about the music, and I'm focused for an hour straight and writing up the article.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Fascinating. Well, thank you, dude. Appreciate you coming on. Good to see you again.
So good to see you guys.
We were talking before we went on the air that we had been in a studio making a record. I made a brief appearance on Kroll Sun, which was one of their seminal records early on, both as young Pittsburghers making records in that town was a cool little moment there when they had a bunch of bands that were really doing it.
It was really blessed that we got to experience all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you.
My pleasure, Joe. And thank you too,
Check it out, people. Find
Thanks, Jim.
Find things that work for you. I think most importantly, what we need to take away from this is it's important to prioritize yourself. in a world where we are continually being eaten away a piece at a time as sidemen, guys that are hired guns for things. People don't know that you're coming off 8 records and they just need you to finish theirs.
Right.
They don't know the toll it takes. You have got to make sure that you invest in yourself, find a way to decompress, to focus, and to give yourself the stress relief that you need.
Yeah. The artist isn't gonna ask you to do that. We are selfish. We don't care about anything but ourselves. So, I think if you're listening out there, do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Just take the time. You're the only one that can do it.
And I will argue that you will make more money the next year because you'll be better. And that's what
Absolutely.
we pay for in this field, is better. So
better and happier.
Yep. Thank you so much. That's it this week from the West Barn. We'll see you next time. Signing off.